Hi, I'm Mitchell Shear, and today I'm going to be talking about the experiment I did on whether or not women are discriminated against when applying for jobs. How did I test this problem? I tested this problem through the distribution of job applications. Inside of one of my classes, I gave the people in the class 4 different job applications that had 2 men and 2 women. In addition to this, I made 1 man and 1 woman have high qualifications and 1 man and 1 woman have lower qualifications. I did this to see whether or not people in my class would tend to put men above women when they were applying to jobs. I had students rank the candidates from best to worst in order of 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order to see which candidates they preferred over others. I selected these participants because there were 3 women and 2 men besides myself. So this gave me a big enough sample pool where I would have not too high of an error, but it also gave me a limited sample pool because I didn't necessarily have the opportunity to do it with more people. The answers for my experiment were that overall my class did not seem to have a gender bias. For the top 2 qualified candidates, they tended to rank them alternately. So the woman was picked first 3 times and the man was picked first twice. And for the genders, no gender tended to really choose one over the other. So it showed that my class didn't really have a bias when it came to gender. But instead of this, I found that child bias was found. So when it came to the lower 2 candidates, the woman, I stated that she had a child, and this immediately made everyone in the experiment put her at the bottom of the list because it was put on the job application that she had a child. And this is because many in my class, during my later interviews with them, I discovered that they believe this because women with children tend to not be as reliable in the workforce. They have overall a primary duty to their child, and this means that they won't be able to work overtime or take as many business trips due to having this child, so therefore they were more of a liability inside of the workplace. The reliability of my results. I thought my results were reliable because they relate to findings from other studies. It has been shown that in America, women with children are routinely discriminated against when they are applying for jobs due to the responsibility they're going to have to this child. And this kind of goes back into the history of America, wherein men were seen as the primary caretakers and women were seen as the primary caretakers. So although the male applicant with the lower rank also had a child, many of my class perceived it as he wasn't necessarily the one responsible for the child because the mother was, so therefore he would have the opportunity to work the overtime shifts and would be able to go on these business trips. So it kind of just goes to show that the inherent gender bias we have can be seen through the children rather than just the rankings of the men and the women. Because although my classmates didn't necessarily have a bias when it came to gender, they did have a bias when it came to the roles of males and women in our society. And I thought my research could have been more reliable by doing the experiment with more people. My sample size was fairly small due to the lack of opportunity I had to necessarily have a bigger sample size. So in having a bigger sample size, I would have had a smaller margin of error and therefore my results would have been more exact. But I do still think they were reliable because my sample size was large enough and it did relate to findings from other studies. And I also said that statistics did play a slight role in my experiment because when I had to go back through the applications, I had to look at the data and see whether or not my classmates tended to rank one gender over the other or what really necessarily happened in terms of the rankings. So the statistics did play a role in finding my results. And then more for reliability, I made sure people didn't lie during my experiment by not fully revealing what the experiment was. Sometimes when researchers are conducting experiments, there is an effect known as the Hawthorne effect where people will change their behavior when they know they were being observed. So when I gave out the job applications, I said that it was for my college counselor to see whether or not people preferred some schools over others. In the application for the people, I didn't necessarily put the same schools, but I put schools that were in similar standings in the nation, which were known to my classmates. So I told them that I was giving them these to see whether or not they preferred schools with similar characteristics. So therefore, I was able